Yum, yum!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Modo with Ellery, and in this episode we're going to be looking at how to take an Adobe Fuse character and get it into Modo and looking good. Now there are some caveats and some things that you'll have to do every time you import one of these models, just in order to make them render well. And we'll also look at some settings and some other adjustments that you can make to get the most out of your renders when you're using these kind of characters. So I've got a character here that I've built entirely in Fuse, and we're going to take and export her. We'll look at just very quickly the process of what we'll go through inside of the Mixamo interface on the website in order to get your character rigged and then set up with poses or animations. And then we'll bring her back down into Modo as an FBX file. So with that, so once you have your character built, you'll just go ahead and click on Save to Mixamo. All right, so it's a pretty simple process of getting the characters built. I'm not going to go into that in this episode, but if there's interest in doing a more deep dive into the creation process inside of Fuse, please let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to record another episode on that. So once you click Save to Mixamo, it will upload the file. Now, one note, I've got her textures here turned up fairly high. So the texture on her shirt I've got set to 2048, which is the highest you can do inside of Mixamo. Same thing with the skin textures. The hair and the pants I've got a little bit lower at 1024, as well as the boots and the gloves are all at 1024. Now you can take everything up to 2048 by 2048, but I found that becomes a bit unstable and sometimes can crash the export process. So I have found that if I put 2 or 3 textures at 2K, then I can actually get it to upload cleanly without any issues, and it doesn't take forever to upload as well. But if you go any more than maybe 3 textures at 2K, it starts to really bog down the export process, which is unfortunate because they don't cause any problems once you have them inside of Modo. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and take this character with a couple of 2K maps and the rest at 1K. We're going to export them, and then they will pop up into the Mixamo interface. So go ahead and click Save to Mixamo, and then I'll just pause and fast forward when we're on the website. So once your upload process is complete, your character will be dropped into this auto rigger setup. And this does actually a fairly decent job of setting up a rigged character for you. You have a couple of different options that you can go with, and usually I would say just leave your stock options. That's going to be leaving your facial blend shapes on. Those are something that you can access and animate inside of Modo. And we'll look at quickly where those are located. And then in a follow-up video, we're also going to look at how to set her up to get a little bit more animation done on this character. But in this one, we're just going to look at where the controls are. And the second one here is the skeleton detail level. So the default here is set to have all of the joints in the fingers, but you can choose lower levels of hand detail, basically, if you want to simplify the character. So if you need a character that is lighter weight, that has less going on in the skeleton, by all means you can simplify that. But for the most part, I usually just use the default setting, and that way you have full control over all of the fingers of the character. So with that, we can go ahead and click Finish. And it just gives you a little info here, which we're going to use FBX, but we can just go ahead now and click Animate, and it will drop us into the animation interface. So the cool thing about this, if you haven't used Fuse or Mixamo before, is that there is a bunch of kind of stock content motion capture data that you can just take and drop right onto your character. So if I go for, here, let's go over to animations. And this will have animations and poses built in. So if I just grab one here and attach it, you'll see it will actually give you a preview on the character. And you have a lot of controls over what you can do as far as kind of doing slight adjustments to the motion. So adjusting the overall speed. In this case, she's picking up something here. So if let's go ahead and just pause on the frame where she's picking it up. You can adjust the height of the object that she's picking up. So now she's picking up something higher. Now it's more at face level. Here you could take it and something down down there. Anyway, so you have some interesting controls here, and overall you can find a lot of cool stuff in here to get you started animating a character with motion capture. Now you can take the rig that will come with this and really do your own animation, or you can even go in and apply other motion capture data, which we're not going to look at in this episode, but you do have a lot of options there. So I'm going to go through here, and I just want to get some kind of idle poses or idle animations. So I'm just going to type in idle into the search field here, and let's see, there's an idle one. That might be a little too generic. Yeah. This is just a static. Oh no, it's an animation. She almost looks static, but she's breathing, so that's cool. So I actually kind of like that one because it's pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and click Add to Pack, and that will put that and attach it to your character here. So we've got that one, and Ninja Idle. Oh, we got to have some Ninja Idle going on. Yeah, definitely. So let's add that one to the pack. And Holding Idle. Sure, we'll add that one. And then one more. I think I'd looked through this before, and around page 7 or 8, I think there was some interesting stuff. So let me switch down here to, let's see if it was 7 or 8. There's one with a character holding a torch and kind of looking around the ground like they're lighting it up with a torch. Oh, there you go. Standing torch inspect. That's kind of cool. So in this way, we could also look at how we could attach some objects to the character rig so that, you know, she could be holding a torch or a glow stick or, you know, something to be able to kind of light up what she's looking at. So I'm also going to attach that one. So go ahead and click Add to Pack. And then as soon as you've done that, you go ahead and click Save to Assets. And then it will save that character. And so you can prep it and actually download the file. So let's go ahead and click Save to my assets. And it's added in all of the animations and the character, and we're going to click View and Download. And you can see here it's got this, it's working on the thumbnail, so we don't have anything yet, but it's got all 4 of the animations on here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click Queue Download. Now this may take a minute to actually get everything going, so after we click Queue Download here, I'll just pause and fast forward again. But we're going to leave this as an FBX format. Default T-pose is fine, 30 frames a second, and no frame reduction, or no keyframe reduction. We can manually do some of that, but for right now I'm just going to leave all of the data in kind of as is. So go ahead and click Queue Download. And it'll take a minute here, and then this will be ready for us to download. So now this one's all ready to go, and I've got a download button here. You can see I also did a previous similar version, a similar character here, just testing this out. And now we're going to just take this one that we've all done, our female adventure. We're going to go ahead and click Download. And what this is going to download is going to have a zip file with a few different things in it. So I'm going to give this a second to download, then I'll pull up the window, and you can see what comes with the character. So now that that's downloaded, I've taken and extracted it into a folder here. It downloads as a zip file. And you can see I've got 5 separate FBX files. So I've got an FBX file for the character, and then I have animation files for all of the individual animations. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in just the basic character. We're going to look at texturing, and then in a follow-up video, we'll look at applying some of the animation stuff to the character. So let's go ahead and hop over into Modo, and we'll get it loaded up. So now inside of Modo, I'm just using the regular open file dialog, so load scene, Control-O, Command-O on a Mac, and I'm just going to go ahead and choose this. We're going to load in the FBX file as a direct, just opening the file. So go ahead and load it up and click Open, and then we're going to get our FBX options. And there's a few things that we're going to want to consider when we're bringing in these FBX files. So I want to leave off Merge with Existing Items because I've got an empty scene here. I just want to open up the file. I do want to load geometry, normals, all the mesh options here, so down through materials. There is an option here for invert materials transparency amount. Now, I have had this actually straight off of the Mix Mode download work both ways. Sometimes when you load it and you don't have this checked, the character will come out as 100% transparent. Sometimes you load it and you click on it and it comes out 100% transparent. So really, I'm not sure if it's updates that they're doing to the software or something, but it comes out wrong. It has come out wrong and it has come out right either way. So I'm just going to take a gamble here and invert it this time because the last time I did it, it was transparent. So I'm going to click on that one. I'm not going to worry about these options with the RGB dBAs or the material transparency amount. I'm going to load cameras, lights, animation. I don't really have any of that other stuff in here, but I'm just going to leave those. Those are the default Modo import options. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And our character will come in, and we'll see that right off the bat, she's gonna look a little bit weird. So if I press O here and turn my inactive meshes to same as active, I see she is bright glowing white. Okay, so let's hop over to the render tab in the shader tree and see what's actually going on here. So go over to render and we'll hit play to get this started. You can see, yep, she is glowing bright white. And we have all of our different materials here, and we're just gonna start by looking at one and see what we've actually got going on here. So if I click on the shirt material, I see that we have our character here. I called this one on the export, I called her Tomb Raider because it was kind of a Lara Croft looking character. So we've got all the materials are named Tomb Raider. So we've got our diffuse colors here for the entire object here. If I double click, you can see what we've got going on. So this is the shirt, right? So this is the top. Then we have a specular color, which isn't a specular color, and we'll get to that in a minute. We've got a gloss, which is set to roughness, and gloss and roughness aren't exactly the same, so we'll get to that in a moment as well. We have a transparent color is what it's set to, but this isn't a transparent color. This is more of an opacity map that we'll use for the hair and the eyelashes and stuff like that. And then we have a normal map. But if we look here, you can see that really nothing is going on with any of these materials. So the first reason, we can look at this if we go down to the texture locator, is that the UV map is not selected. It's just set to blank. So if we choose the tops diffuse layer, this is going to set all of these now to the proper channel. And here inside of the viewport, this is actually going to look okay, but you can see it's still not rendering correctly. And there are a couple of reasons for this. So let's start just with the normal map here. And if we go to the texture layers, you'll see that the blend mode is set to add. And this is actually going to be true of all of the textures in the shader tree here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my filter here to texture, and it's just going to bring up all of my textures. So I'm just going to shift click on all of these, and I'm going to set the blend mode back to normal. Okay, and already that fixes a bunch of what's going on inside of our render. Now, from that, we can also take, since we've got this filtered down to just the textures, we can take and apply the proper UVs to the rest of these. So we'll take the bottom mat here, and we'll go to the texture locator, and we'll set this UV map to bottom diffuse UV. And let's kind of zoom out here so we can see to make sure that everything works well. Oops, so let's also make this one so we can see everything. Okay. We've got our shoes, so let's take those and we'll set those to the shoes diffuse UV. We've got the gloves, which we'll set to the gloves, and the hair, we'll set that to the proper channel. And then finally we have the body mat, which is in this case mostly the face, but it also includes the hands. And if you had bare feet or something, it would include the feet, or if she was wearing shorts or something like that, you would see the legs on there. But let's go ahead and put these onto the body diffuse layer, and now we should have everything pretty much lined up. What is not working yet is the eyes. We're going to look at the eyes separately, just because they need a little bit more special treatment in order to make them look pretty good. So let's go ahead and zoom in here on the shirt, and now we can continue to drill down and see what's going on here. So let's go back to having this unfiltered, and we're going to look at the material, and right now you can see the diffuse is set to 100%. The specular is 100%, the Fresnel is 100%, and the roughness is 76%. Now we have a map to change our roughness, but the everything set to 100% can be problematic. And you can see since we did the invert transparency on this one did work that way, so it came out to 0. So as of the build that's out currently right now, click on the invert button. I can't promise it'll be that way next month, but for right now, inverting the transparency seems to do the trick. It did on my last import, and it also did on this import. And if we look here, we can also see that we have a luminous intensity set to 1. Now, this is actually going to be true of all of the other materials as well. You can see 100, 100, 100, luminous set to 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now filter this on material. We're going to select all of the materials. I'm going to set my diffuse amount to 80. My default specular I'm just going to set down to 4. And then my default roughness I'm just going to put at 40, kind of resetting this to a standard Modo texture for the most part. And then I'm going to set my luminous intensity. So right now it's set to black, but if we were to take, the idea here is if we were to take and put an already illuminated version of the texture on and just set it to luminous color, then we would get something that wouldn't have to worry about lighting. But in this case, I just want to turn it down and kill that so we don't have any illumination on there on the texture. So again, let's go ahead and reset our filters. So we're back to all of our stuff in the shader tree, and let's check and see what we've got going on. So it looks like the diffuse layer is now working, and that's good. Okay, let's continue up, and we've got this specular color layer, which is not a specular color. This is more of a specular amount. All right, so the idea here is we're getting little bits of highlights coming on the areas where there is kind of some mud gathered on the texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this one from specular color to specular amount, and once I do that, we may get a pretty big jump in the amount of specular. It's actually not too bad because it's been pretty well toned. But if you get a lot of reflection on there, you should go in and set your high and low values. So if you want more info on setting your high and low values for textures like this, go and check the previous episode where we talk about creating textures for more complex materials. I'll put a link in the description. But for right now, I'm going to set this one. I'm going to leave my low value at 0, but I don't really want my specular to go higher than 5, so I could put 5% there. And you can see it really didn't make any change, and that's because we were just capping this off at a level so that it's not going so high. Since it was largely black, it didn't make a huge difference, but that is something that you can use. Now, an alternate method that you could use here, if I set this back up to 100%, would be to take this specular amount and set the blend mode to multiply. Now, by doing that, I could have control over just the specular amount inside of the material, and then it's going to be multiplied inside of that specific texture. So either way is going to work, just depending on the kind of control and where you want to control the texture. All right, so moving on, we've got a roughness value here, which is a gloss channel. And so gloss is actually the inverse of roughness. So right now we're running from 0% to 100%. And what I want to do is first invert those values, and then I want to bracket them into something a little bit better. So I'm going to start here. Let's just invert it. We'll put 100 to 0. Now, alternately, you could also click the invert button, but since we're going to be changing these values and reining them in a bit, I find that it's less intuitive to use the invert and more intuitive to just put the higher value under low and the lower value under high. Now, your mileage may vary. Again, if you think of it better that way, by all means, click invert and then just adjust your textures that way. So at the low value, so this is the low amount of roughness. I don't want to go down to 0 roughness really ever. I want to set my low on roughness down to maybe 15%. We got some glossy parts of some mud or something on the outfit, and for the highest value of roughness, I don't want to go all the way up to 100 because that's very rough. I'm going to go up to maybe 65%. There you go. Now you can start to see we're getting a little bit of the sheen on the mud, but everything else looks pretty much rough. And you can take and adjust those values as you see fit on your character. All right, so moving on here, we have this this transparent, it's set to transparent color. You can see that this really doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing right here. This would be if we have something like where we have eyelashes or hair, which are going to be in the body material. So really we don't need this at all, and I'm just going to hide it so that it's not eating up any extra resources. It's one less thing that has to be processed. And then the last thing is the normal map, which is working correctly, so we're pretty much good to go there. So you can go through and do the same thing for all of your kind of basic layers here. So for the pants, the shoes, the gloves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fast forward and set those all up pretty much the same way as the shirt, and then we'll go look at the special cases of the skin, the eyes, and the hair. Alright, so now that the clothing is all done, let's kind of zoom in on the face here, and we'll start looking at the skin, the eyes, and the hair, which is both the hair and the eyelashes. We'll do a little bit of work on this in order to get it to look better, but there is some stuff that we can do beyond what we're going to cover here with textures and materials in order to improve it even another level. Alright, so let's start here with the skin. So I'm going to click on the skin here. And we have all the same stuff that there were for all of the other materials. We've got diffuse and specular color, we've got a roughness, transparent color, and a normal. Now for the transparent color, which is actually a transparent amount, there is actually something here now. And this is going to be a map for our eyelashes. So let's go ahead and close that down. We're not going to need that for this piece. We're actually going to split the eyelashes into a separate piece in order to better handle the transparency. Okay, so we've got our normal map, which is appears to be working okay. We've got our specular color, which we need to change to a specular amount. So with the specular amount changed in here, we definitely are seeing that there is something that we'll need to adjust with our roughness. And the roughness values are going to be a little bit more, require a little bit more attention than they did on the clothing, just because we'll lose the look of the feeling of skin if we don't have this set up well. So let's go here to the roughness. And if I open this up, you can see what's going on here. And if we look here right at the face, you'll see that we have areas that are lighter around the lips, nose, eyes, and ears. And so these are going to be the areas where we want to have a more glossy feel. In other words, we're going to need to have a lower roughness value. So just like with the other maps that this is a glossiness map, we want to reverse it because roughness is going to be the opposite. And so really we want lower roughness values through those areas so that they appear more glossy than the rest of the skin. Okay, so let's go ahead and start just putting in 100 and 0, and that's going to flip these around. All right. And now we can see that we've got something that is looking a little bit better, but you can see that this 0 value is really clamping in and giving us a very dry kind of look here to the skin. Now we're going to add subsurface scattering to it here in a moment, but we want to kind of clean it up as best we can before we get there. So let's start by taking this high value, which is going to be very rough at 100%. We'll drive this down. I'm going to push this all the way down to 40 here to start. And you can see when we do that, we start to see a little bit of gloss showing up kind of on her cheeks, and definitely more on the lips. So this is getting more along the lines of what we want, but I find that this is probably a little bit on the glossy side now. So instead of just initially ratcheting this lower value back up, which is actually the higher value now, but the low value, we're going to take this and we're going to start increasing the high value just a little bit because we don't want really mirror reflections anywhere. So I'm going to put in 10%, and that's going to dial back the lips just a little bit, and I'm going to kind of zoom in here so we can see what's going on. And you know, that's probably not too bad. So this is going to be probably our glossiest part. So I'm going to keep this high value, which is going to have our lower number, in check with kind of where I want the glossiness of the lips. That's a good spot. There'll also be a little bit, like I said, around the nose and ears, but the place that we'll notice more definitely is going to be here in the lips. So I think that's probably good. I may end up adjusting that a little bit, but that's probably going to work for now. So now this is actually a pretty good angle here because we can also see on the cheeks, and here we're actually getting a bit too much glossiness now. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to increase it until I get more of a proper value there. And 50 I think was a little high. Probably 45 is going to give me about where I want to be. All right, so you can take and adjust those obviously as you want in order to get the look a little bit better. So now let's go ahead and we're going to hop down to the material here, and we're going to go down to material trans, and now we're going to put subsurface scattering on here. Now one thing to note is that the way that these models are constructed, you basically have two options when you export from Fuse, and that is to keep the entire body underneath the clothing, or to cull the transparent polygons so that there's really no body underneath. Now that can work well if you're going to spend a lot more time on the rigging and setup, perhaps even doing some cloth simulation on the clothing. But if you're just going to do a standard rig, you're going to have a lot of areas where the skin is going to pop through the clothing, and it's going to ruin the look, and require really quite a lot more detail work in order to get that to line up. So this model doesn't have any body area underneath the clothing, which means that the subsurface scattering is going to work a little bit differently, because subsurface scattering is typically going to be based off of kind of complete mesh pieces that are closed, kind of airtight, watertight mesh pieces. Since this isn't that, our typical values that we might use are going to be a bit off. So if I take this and I'm going to start by putting in 35%, and to start here I'm just going to put in kind of a reddish kind of skin, under the skin blood kind of color. You can see it's coming in really heavy at 35%, right? So my scattering distance is 5 millimeters and 1 meter. This isn't going to work quite the same here, but I am going to ratchet this down just a bit. Let's go down to cut that in half to 2.5 millimeters and 100 millimeters. You can see it does knock it back a little bit, but not so much as if we did have a complete closed mesh underneath. So instead of doing that, we have two main options. One is going to be to just kind of pull down the overall subsurface amount and leave it at that to call it a deal, or we'll create a secondary map for the subsurface. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the ins and outs here inside of the video, but some options that you have would be to do something like take the diffuse color and make some adjustments to it to give it a little bit more of a ruddy appearance, and that's also going to give it some darkness in some other areas, and then you could use that as your subsurface color, so that could work. And another option that you have would be to create a map that will mask off your subsurface amount. So we'd create basically a grayscale mask that would go on top, and we would use it to lower the subsurface amounts in certain areas. So again, we cover that in a previous video where we put a subsurface kind of skin texture on the old man character inside of Modo. So again, link down in the video description if you want to go back over that. But you can see as I pulled this down a little bit, we're starting to get something that's fairly reasonable for the skin. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that for now, and we'll hop on to the eyes and the hair. Now, the eyes, we're going to start off with kind of a simplified version here. And let's see, I'm going to hop to a perspective view so that I can more easily grab this without changing my preview. And we don't have an eye material at default. This is something that we're going to create because the eye texture itself, if we look inside of the body diffuse, is here inside of the body. But we don't want to use the same texture for that because we want to have some different controls, especially over things like the glossiness and the reflectivity of the eyes. So we're going to press M and we'll call these eyes. And the eyes will pop in here. And as soon as they do, we're going to want to take this diffuse color, and I'm just going to duplicate it, or you could instance it if you're going to make any adjustments, but I'm just going to duplicate it and pull it up into the eyes. And for this one, we're going to use a different UV map. So this one, we are going to use the default diffuse, and that's actually going to give us the right UV lineup for our eyes. All right, so additionally on top of this, if I'm just going to keep these simple eyes like I'm going to for the sake of this video, I'm going to want to make some tweaks and adjustments here. So I'm going to take my roughness and pull it down to maybe 10%. And I'm going to put a bit of clear coat for right now. So I'm going to try 25% clear coat. And right now we're not getting much out of this because we don't have a good environment. So I'm going to take and drop in just one of the smart IBL environments. And let's put her, how about, I'm a sucker for the paper mill ruins, so we're going to put her in the paper mill ruins here. So we'll drop that one in there, and now we'll actually get some more proper reflections. And this will also help us get a better read on the other textures as well. But now this is going to start to be something that will work a bit better for us, and will work even better once we get the eyelashes not so opaque there. So let's go back here and just a little bit more tweaking. I'm going to take and turn up my clear coat to 40%. That should give those just a little bit more pop, and I think that'll work. Okay, so now let's move on to the hair, and we're going to cover the hair and the eyelashes just kind of as one concept, even though they're going to have two separate materials. So let's go ahead, and since the hair is already set up with a material here, we'll go ahead and change this around. So we have a diffuse color, which is going to give us the color over all of the hair, and then also if your Fuse characters have anything on, like she has like a hairband in the back, the color will show up down here, so you can always go in and change that if you need to. We've got a specular color, which again, this is a specular amount, so we'll put that in. We have a roughness one here, and then we have a transparent color, which we're not going to use as a transparent amount like we've done in the other ones. Now we could take transparent, this one here, and we could put this in with you know, a transparent color, or a transparent amount rather, and then we could also put it on masking off the reflectivity, specularity, and anything like that. But the problem with doing it that way is that we're going to be left with some artifacts around the edges, so we're going to do something a little bit different here, and we're going to use this as a mask for the entire material. So let's go ahead, and for right now I'm just going to hide that so it's out of the way. I'm going to take my specular color and change that to my specular amount, and then I'm going to set it to multiply. And then I can always just adjust my specular amount here inside of my base material. All right, and then we're going to take our roughness, and I'm just going to take and invert this. So this one I'm not going to really play with the values much at all, so I'm just going to click invert to invert that entirely. All right, that's starting to look a little bit better. And I'm also going to turn on double-sided so that we actually get proper shading going on underneath here. So there we go, we start to see that. And while we're at it here, let's turn off that extra light because we don't need that because it's not part of the paper mill ruins. All right, so there we go. Now that's starting to look fairly decent. Again, we can go in and make more tweaks and adjustments, but just for the general idea of setting this up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and pull it up to the top just because I like to keep my masks up at the top. And then I'm going to add another layer as a group. I'm going to take all of this stuff, including the material, put it into the group. And then I'm going to create another material. All right, so for right now I'm going to hide the group material, and for this material I'm going to turn it to a traditional material. I'm going to turn the specular and Fresnel off, roughness off, turning off all of the options here, turning diffuse down to 0, and then we're also going to go to our material trans and turn our transparency up to 100%. All right, so now with that, it's actually going to make the hair entirely transparent, right? So I can go ahead and turn this on double-sided if I want. It's really not going to make much of a difference, but it will give a little bit of shading should we need it. So the idea here is that this is going to be our kind of no hair material, and then we're going to have our actual hair material on top of this. So if I take this and pull it up here, and we make this visible, we go back to where we kind of started off a little bit ago, and then we're going to take this transparent color and we're going to change this under shader control to group mask. And now what's going to happen is that's going to mask out everything based off of this texture. So once we make that visible and we give it a second to redraw here, we'll see that we actually start to see the hair strands coming in, because what we're getting is we're getting a transition using that mask between our hair texture and our completely transparent texture. Now there are other ways you can do that obviously, but I find that to be a really easy way to set up your material such that you know, you get some good results with your hair and your transparency edges and everything without getting any jagged edges, and getting it fairly quickly. So that's how I like to set that up. All right, and so now we're going to do the same thing here real quickly for the eyelashes. So let's go ahead and select the eyelashes. We'll give them a material, all those lashes. And I'm going to be fairly simple with the material on these. I'm going to just give them a dark color, like almost black. And I am going to leave a little bit of shininess on them. You could also just make these completely matte, and it's probably not going to make any difference, but it may give you a slightly faster render time. So just a side note there. So let's go ahead and make another material for that. And now I'm going to take my duplicate of the transparent material that I created. Let's go ahead and pull this one up. And then I'm going to go down to my body material where I have this transparent color. And since I don't need this for the body, I don't even have to duplicate it. I'm just going to pull it straight up, put it into lashes. And now if I want to, I could just drag this directly on top of this material as a mask for that material. But since I may want to go in and add some extra texture or color to the eyelashes later, I'm still going to go ahead and make a group. And then I'm going to put the material and the texture layer into there. And then I'll set this one from transparent color to a group mask. And I'm going to go ahead and actually use, there is an eyelash diffuse UV layer. So let's go ahead and select that. And there we go. And now our eyelashes should pop in as working correctly. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I could pretty easily go in and adjust those just by adjusting that texture on that layer. All right, so with that, we've got a pretty decent start to creating this character and making it something that's a bit more render worthy here inside of Modo. So this is going to do it for this section. We're going to come back in another episode, and we're going to look at how we can improve the model using some subdivision surfaces on top of this mesh, and we'll also look at how we can import and use the animations. So that will be in the next episode. So if you like this video or videos like it, you can follow me on Patreon, patreon.com/Ellery, where you can subscribe and get the downloadable versions of these videos, as well as all the content materials that go along with it. And if you'd like to get this episode or any other episode of Modo with Ellery a la carte, you can get those on Gumroad at gumroad.com/Ellery. So that does it for this one. Now go make something cool, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yum, yum!